Hello, welcome to our Building a Life Worth Living webisode series, Toolbox. We are today teaching you guys all about wise mind. So just to cover our quick disclaimer, as we are putting this on as shown by Youth Eastside Services, I wanted to share, I want to see if I can advance our slides first. There we go. All right, so what Youth Eastside Services does is we do behavioral health services for youth on the East Side in particular. Our clients are ages between birth and 22 years old, and we also work with their families. Our mission is to be a lifeline for kids and families on the East Side. So connecting folks to the mental health supports that they need, other resources, case management services. We do all sorts of different things, including this webinar series. If you are interested in mental health counseling, substance use or co-occurring counseling, or just community education, you can come find us for those kinds of things. You can reach out to us at youtheastsideservices.org. We're currently offering both in-person and virtual services. You can follow that link to learn about both options. You are also welcome to just call us directly at 425-747-4937. That goes to our open access intake department. And then as well, you're always welcome to follow us on social media. If you would like to reach out to someone else, what we were talking about in this section is if you're experiencing any sort of crisis or a need to talk to someone right now, we have some options for that as well, because unfortunately you cannot reach out to Delaney or I outside of this webinar. But for crisis moments or when you maybe don't want to call 911, but again, maybe you need to talk to someone immediately, feel free to call the 24-hour King County crisis line. The number is right up there. You can also call or text the crisis text line. That is also a 24/7 number. And at those lines, you can talk to someone trained in how to deal with mental health and as well the resources in your community. So you can either link with things or just get some general advice. The last number on here is for TeenLink. That is a peer-to-peer resource. It's also kind of a crisis line though. But if you were to chat in or call in at that resource, all the calls would be answered by another teen. So that one's a great option for some of our younger viewers. And they're open every single night of the year from 6 to 10 p.m. So not 24/7, but they do have quite a few hours that you can reach someone in. I am Kaylin Griffith. I am a behavioral health support specialist, and I'm here with my colleague.
And I'm Delaney Nearest. I am the school-based behavioral health coordinator, social worker, and drug and alcohol counselor by training.
Perfect. And the materials that we are using for our Toolbox webinar is the DBT Skills in Schools textbook, as well as the DBT Skills Training Manual. We're pulling a lot of our resources from this, our lesson plans, and the way that we practice our skills. And Delaney and I are also both foundationally trained in DBT as well.
So today's agenda, we are going to start talking about mindfulness, which I know is a huge buzzword. Lots of people know about it, but what is it actually? So we're going to be talking about that. We are going to incorporate some practice as well. So if you are joining us live or listening to the recording, we hope you take a moment to do that and practice with us. The main skill that we're going to cover today is one of my favorites. It's called Wise Mind. We're also going to give you guys something to practice at home. And then we have a Q&A at the end of this if anybody wants to ask us questions about what we covered today or what we covered last week. As always, our series has a companion handout. We know that the way webinars kind of are is sometimes they are easy to kind of just turn on and then tune out. I know I am guilty of that, especially in this virtual world of just putting it on and then being like, yeah, I'm paying attention, and then maybe not really. So all of our webinar series have corresponding handouts that you can use to follow along and take notes, as well as put into practice some of the skills and make it relevant to you. So you can always find that on our website or in the chat, and you follow along with us there. So thinking about mindfulness, before we kind of have to talk about the opposite of mindfulness. So wondering if anyone out there has experienced these type of things. Had to reread something, maybe multiple times because you can't remember what you just read. This happens to me all the time when I'm either reading a work email or reading a book or kind of reading anything these days. Have you ever found yourself zoning out in a meeting and you can't remember what it was you were thinking about or what was just said or what you should be paying attention to? Again, like I said, I am guilty of turning on those Zoom webinars and then just thinking I'm paying attention and not really. And then have you ever tried to multitask and lost your wallet because you apparently put it in the microwave? Can't say this one has happened to me specifically, but I have put the tea kettle in the fridge before instead of grabbing the water pitcher to fill the tea kettle. It's something
Well,
I've
I've put
definitely
many
done.
things in the fridge before.
I don't know what it is about the fridge. You just put things that aren't supposed to go there when you're not paying
Storage.
attention, which connects really well with this meme that we found. I think Kaylin and I both related to it strongly. Why do you keep opening the fridge? There may be something that wasn't there before. I feel that on an existential level, actually.
Especially for all of us working from home right now. The fridge is right there.
Yeah, so if any of these things have happened to you, and I know they've happened to me, this might be a little nod of, hey, maybe that mindfulness thing is something that I could use. Because this is sort of mindlessness, which is the first thing we kind of want to cover. So mindlessness. Again, has there ever been a time when you realized you're trying to make decisions or doing something without fully thinking about it? Or it might have seemed like your emotions were making all of these decisions. I read a post on the internet recently, and it was saying something on the lines of like, living life during the pandemic, we all just feel like Sims, where it takes us 6 hours to make spaghetti, and if something gets in our way, we just sit there and cry. It's like, I really relate to that. And just imagine the little like diamond above my head and like walking and being like, why am I here? I don't know.
The
So
needs bars just like panicking.
yeah, right. My little bars are in the red zone. So thinking about mindlessness is sort of that inactive state of mind that's characterized by drawing on things from the past, assumptions, just kind of whatever it is, kind of not even really being in the moment. You're operating on your kind of basic human programming. Again, thinking like a sim. You're just kind of doing what you know you need to do, and you're doing the motions. Another example might be you're like driving to work, but you don't remember getting there, and you're just kind of like, I'm suddenly here.
It's a very scary one.
That is kind of a scary one. Yes, driving and not really.
It's totally happened to me like multiple times recently, but like the experience of then being there and being like, oh crap, how did I get here? I was driving a motor vehicle. Oh
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah. So when people are mindless, they kind of get trapped in that perspective, right? And they don't really feel like they have a lot of control. At least I don't feel like I have a lot of control when I'm in that space, or that it's just kind of not meaningful. I feel very robotic. I feel stuck. And like I said, I feel like a sim. And that's not really the space that I would like to be in personally. So thinking about mindlessness, which leads us to then what is the opposite of mindlessness, which is, surprise, spoiler, mindfulness.
So, how does mindfulness help? Mindfulness is intended to give you more choices and control over your behavior. That just kind of makes sense. If you feel more present in the moment and you're more aware of what's happening while it's happening, then you do naturally have more control and choice over what your next choices are, your next steps are. Reduces your emotional suffering and increases your pleasure. Again, partially because you build awareness of where your pleasure is, and you build awareness for when you can change that suffering into pleasure. A big thing about our world is that we are heavily ruled by the news. And I think the news is a really, really great example for how negative our society can be sometimes. Like, how many times have you clicked through the news and it's all negative? That happens so often. There are very rarely any good stories. So we are naturally taught a little bit to just look for the negative things. So if we are only just paying attention to those things as we mindlessly go through our day, whereas we can increase our awareness of when pleasurable things are happening, that actually can have a really big impact on the rest of your day. It helps you make important decisions. So thinking about seeing exactly what you have to work with and making the best informed choice off of that. It helps you focus your attention and makes you more effective and productive while you're trying to do something. It increases your compassion for yourself and others. Again, thinking about dialectics, it increases your ability to take other perspectives. Naturally, in taking other perspectives, your compassion grows because you're understanding how people can come to feel different things. It also just lessens your pain, tension, stress, and it's rather robustly shown in research that it can improve your physical health as well. So thinking about mindfulness, it really comes down to learning to live just in one moment at a time. And that moment can be freedom from your past and from your future, because in any given moment, you are in the present. You are not dealing with your past. You are not dealing with the future just yet. You are just being. And sometimes, especially in our society, we really don't stop to smell the rosebuds or the flowers, as they say. That's exactly what mindfulness is kind of getting at. And it has two main components. So one being full awareness and opening your mind. So being present and allowing yourself to participate fully in the moment. And the other side is attentional control and being able to focus your mind. So taking those moments where you really do want to be working on one specific thing or get a certain task done, being able to put your mind where you want it to be and focus on that task to the point where you're able to get it done effectively.
One of the things I think about is being a human being versus a human doing. And so kind of those two states that you just mentioned, Kaylin, is like, well, the first one is kind of a human being, so being present, and then a human doing is sort of that intentional focus control, but you want to be an intentional human doing, right? You want to make sure you're doing what you want to be doing instead of sort of feeling like a robot, right? So human being and then human doing.
And it's a dialectic. You want both. We want to find that balance between where we have that healthy medium. So some tips for practicing mindfulness, and we'll go much more into this over the next couple of weeks even, but engage without judgment of yourself or the practice itself. I know when I am first teaching mindfulness to someone, if you don't understand how it's helpful, it kind of feels super weird. You're just sitting there, you're like, okay, I've got this image in my head of like just being super restful and peaceful. And if you don't know how to practice mindfulness, you're kind of just forcing yourself there. And then a lot of judgment happens of, I'm not doing this correctly. What am I doing? This is super weird. I don't like this. How is this supposed to help? Mindfulness is about noticing those things, accepting that they're there, and kind of just letting them go. Don't let those judgments actually become judgments against yourself. Just let those judgments be labels and watch them go around. So don't try and change the present and simply just experience reality as it is in that moment. The other thing that we talk about a lot with mindfulness is the quote unquote continual task of bringing the mind back to the present moment. So as we're going through a mindfulness practice, which Delaney and I are going to do in a couple of minutes, you might notice that you find yourself getting distracted. You find yourself, your mind wandering to other things, to your to-do list, what you're going to have for dinner, maybe to what things you have to take care of at home, to what you're going to do this weekend with your friends. And again, don't punish yourself for those things. But when you notice yourself thinking along those things, when you notice yourself having lost track of that mindfulness exercise, just gently lead your mind back to the mindfulness exercise. Drop it back off, be like, hey, this is where I want you to be. And that's perfectly fine. And the thing is, if you're not super great at practicing mindfulness or you haven't done it a whole lot before, your mind is absolutely going to wander. That is totally expected. That is how your mind works. It is something that we have to strengthen like a muscle where you can keep your attention in the place where we want it. So that is, again, that attentional control piece of this. It is a practice just as much as it is an observation. So let's try and practice.
Yeah, so we're going to practice. I'm going to actually ask you to stop sharing your screen, Kaylin, so I can take control. One of the things too, before I jump into our practice, is I like to think about mindfulness as an intentional superpower. So I don't know about you, I don't know about Kaylin either. I think it'd be pretty dope to be a superhero. And I know that I'm not going to be able to be like doused in radioactive waste. I probably don't want that to happen, actually. I'm not going to like mutate. I'm not an alien. Like, I don't have any of this cool stuff going on. I'm not going to be an X-Man or whatnot. But one of the things I can do is practice mindfulness. And mindfulness, in a way, feels like a superpower to me, because a lot of folks, when they do practice mindfulness, they just kind of feel like when you're around them, it's kind of a different, I don't know, like a different vibe. It's a different way of being that I think we're just not used to. So I think of mindfulness as slowly working the superhero power that you can like grow in yourself. It's a skill you have to learn. And like, think about maybe, I don't know, every time you do mindfulness of like that like superhero montage where you're like, yeah, I'm learning how to do stuff. So that's how I think about mindfulness, but that's just me because I'm a nerd. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a website that is super helpful for me. There are a lot of resources out in the world when it comes to practicing mindfulness. So Headspace is one of them. Full disclosure, we are not funded or we're not getting any money from Headspace by talking about this at all. Headspace has a handful of things that are free, and they also have a subscription service similar to Calm as well. That's another popular one, but you can always go to YouTube. There are tons and tons of different resources out there that are free for you. So just because I'm showing you Headspace that does have some sort of monetary requirement to it sometimes, that does not mean I'm saying you should do this. I also realized I didn't share sound. There we go, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this mindfulness audio track. It's on their website. It's free. You can listen to it whenever you want. It is about 5 minutes long. This person is going to give us instructions. We're just going to sit here and listen. And Kaylin and I are going to do it. We're going to keep our cameras on, so you're going to just see us, close our eyes and be mindful. But the cool thing is this will be on the recording, so you guys can listen to it yourself if you don't want to go find it online. But there are lots of really great resources, and this is just simply one of them. And our goal is to show you lots of those resources throughout our whole series. So I'm going to just hit play.
So just taking a moment to get comfortable. We're going to start with the eyes open. Just a nice soft focus. Aware of the space around you, and just taking a couple of big deep breaths. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, feeling the body expand. As you breathe out, noticing how the body softens. And with the next out breath, just gently closing the eyes. As you close the eyes, just taking a moment to pause, to appreciate that feeling of being on your own for just a few moments. Nothing to do, just feeling the weight of the body pressing down. Appreciating that sense of space. And just starting to notice the environment around you, just allowing any sounds to come and go. Allowing any thoughts to come and go. And then bringing the attention back to the body. Just taking a moment to notice how the body feels. Sense of heaviness or lightness. Sense of stillness or movement. Not thinking about the feeling, just noticing and then just letting it go. Instead, shifting the attention to the breath and rising and falling movement in the body. Starting to notice the rhythm of breathing. Can't feel any movement, just gently placing your hand on the stomach. And although we're following both the in-breath and the out-breath, paying special attention to the out-breath. As you breathe out, just letting go of any inner chatter, letting go of any tension in the body. And in letting go, just feeling a sense of space. In the mind, in the body. Not breathing in any special way, just following the body as it exhales. We're enjoying that feeling, appreciating that feeling of space with each and every out-breath. As you begin to bring the attention back to the body again, just coming back to that feeling of contact, the body pressing down. Back to any sounds around you. And when you're ready, just gently opening the eyes again.
All right. So Kaylin, how did that one feel for you?
I noticed a lot of thoughts going by, and I actually think it's really, really cool that we started with this one before we talk about a whole lot of how to do mindfulness. And just for folks who might be listening, our next 2 weeks are more on like the actual specific skills that you would use while practicing mindfulness. So the thing that I wanted to pay attention to today is just like what it's kind of like just listening. And just focusing on your breathing, just kind of letting things go. And trying not to think about like what my face looks like, since I normally do mindfulness like not on camera, just things like that. It was very peaceful and calm.
Cool. One of the things that I also talk to the students that I work with about is with our bodies, there's not a whole lot sometimes we can control, right? So if I were to tell you like, Kaylin, lower your heart rate right now, you'd be like, what? I don't know how to do that, right? Like if your heart's racing, or like, Kaylin, stop sweating. Like you're gonna be like, I don't know how to do that. How do I do that?
I mean, just close my pores.
Just close your pores, right? Just like, you can't do that, right? But there's one thing we can for sure always control, and that is our breath. Like even just thinking about it is like scientifically shown to like have an impact on your physical state. If you are feeling escalated in any way, or overwhelmed or anxious or stressed or whatever, just simply thinking about, okay, what is my breathing like right now, can make a huge impact. So that's a lot of what I think too about practicing mindfulness, is it gives you a chance to check in with your breath and check in to see, okay, am I breathing really quickly? And if you are, that's fine. You don't need to change it, but just thinking about it will help make an impact. So I was thinking about that during the activity, and then also I'm hungry. So I thought about that a few times too. I was like, oh man, hungry.
Yeah, as one does.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of something while you were talking, and I don't know if anyone listening to this like has the same childhood experience, but when I was littler, I used to kind of had that very like strong realization that sometimes when you become aware of your breathing, you can't just make it be automatic again. It doesn't just go back in there. You do actually fully take control of your breath when it becomes part of your awareness. And it used to be a very, very scary thing for me, because I was like, oh my God, like, how do I switch this process back to just being automatic? Now I'm going to have to like remember to breathe every day. And that would happen every single time. And even though it's kind of like nerve-wracking to kind of take that control, there's also, if you can practice having that control and honing that control, it can be a really, really, like you said, big superpower to use against unpleasant physical sensations.
Yeah.
Amongst many other things. But I will go ahead and share our slides again. And if you are watching this with anyone else at home, or anyone else in your lives, I would encourage you to also like chat with other people about what mindfulness has been like for you. I think sometimes sharing that like physical experience, or even just that cognitive experience with someone else, and just comparing like how it goes, can be so interesting, because it is very different for different people. And I'm willing to bet you'll find some similarities too. And it might give you some hints about what works for you. Because not all mindfulness practices will work for you. Some will work really great. Others will be like, I don't understand this. And some are a good happy medium. So definitely talk with other people about your mindfulness.
A thing too that we're going to try to practice throughout this series is give you other options about what mindfulness can look like. Like what we just did is a very stereotypical mindfulness practice. We're going to try to do some other stuff too that counts as mindfulness, I mean, anything can count as mindfulness if you're thinking about what it is that you're doing and thinking about being in the present moment. Like you can eat things and be mindful. You can walk and be mindful. You can
dance.
You can dance and be mindful. Yeah, maybe we'll have to do a dance, like a dance off or something. But no, okay, maybe not. Sorry.
Oh, we'll get to that next week, maybe. We get to participate.
But you know, part of what's cool about DBT too is doing what works is something that we always say is doing what works. So that thing that we just did might not work for you. That's totally okay. There'll probably be something else that we do that will work for you. And it's all about trial and error and testing things out. So the next part that we're going to get into is kind of thinking about our states of mind and being aware of what that is. So there's sort of 3 states of mind in DBT that we talk about. I think it's articulated very well with these scales of like the head and the heart. You can also see it as, some folks will talk about it as left brain, right brain. Like whenever I've talked to this about students, they're like, oh yeah, the left brain, right brain thing. And I've definitely seen that image where one side is all like very math and the other side is like exploding paint.
As a nerd, that really bothers me because that's not actually how your brain works, but that's okay.
No, it is not. It is not. And I've had people say that like, oh, this kind of reminds me of that. So actually what I'm usually more reminded of when we think of these different states of mind is I believe it's Sarah Scribbles does that comic with the heart and the brain, and they're like doing things and they're like running around and the heart's like, I'm gonna go do the thing. And the brain is like, no. So that's mostly what I think about when I think about this. But the first mind that we want to talk about is emotion mind. An emotion mind is the state of mind where your emotions are in control and thinking and in control and influencing your thinking and behaviors. I think a lot of people are pretty familiar with emotion mind. Your actions are going to be a little bit more impulsive, a little less thought out. I know that I'm more of an emotion mind person just naturally. That's kind of how I operate. I tend to think with my emotions first. I tend to feel things, and sometimes I feel them really extremely. And I tend to just live in emotion mind a little bit more. Other things that happen in emotion mind or that people will think about again is sort of that our artistic side, just kind of connecting with those pieces of yourself. Sometimes people will see as emotion mind as more likely to cry or more likely to laugh, more likely to be excited. Again, with all the things we do in DBT, there's not necessarily a good or a bad space. It just is, right? So if you're in that emotion mind and you're thinking, oh shoot, I'm an emotion mind person, is that bad? No, totally not bad. It's more of just bringing about awareness to it. So on one hand, we have emotion mind. The next one that we have is reasonable mind. Reason mind.
I might actually pause on this one because I think there's something I put on the handout that I then edited out of this slide.
Oh,
so
okay.
For folks who maybe need to finish the handout or want to finish the handout, the other thing that I had put on this slide originally is the idea that most of our emotions are kind of associated with action urges. They make us want to do something. And that's because emotions give us very important information about our world. Our emotions are our reactions. Our emotions are the way we feel about the things going on in our world. How we feel and how we center ourselves compared to what's going on in our world really matters. It is very important for figuring out what we want to do next. So thinking about folks who might be more in emotion mind, what are the action urges associated with the emotions you might be experiencing? For anger, it might be things like yelling, lashing out, just screaming. For joy, it might be jumping or singing or dancing or just having a really happy tone and going around and introducing yourself to a whole bunch of people. Sadness might be isolation or just sitting and not doing anything and crying. So thinking about those impulses that lead to those urges, part of us talking about these different states of mind is you being aware, hey, if I'm in emotion mind, that might mean my actions are a little bit in control of my emotions right now. Maybe that's something that I need to take a look at. So being aware of these states is kind of what gives you the clues to investigate where you need to look. That was not grammar. Struggle. Anyway.
Yeah, so then rational mind or reasonable mind, we kind of use them interchangeably, but rational mind is going to be that other side of the space of cool, logical, calculated, thinking more in that, I don't know, like I think of like rational mind is like very Sherlock Holmes or potentially Spock. things like that, where you're really in that space of you're just calm, cool, collected, you're making choices, and you're not necessarily acting in terms of thinking about people's feelings or your own feelings. You're acting in that logic rational space, right? So we have on here a logic puzzle. One of the things I always like to think about too when it comes to like the different emotion mind and rational mind is different characters that fit into it. You know, like I mentioned Sherlock and Spock. I was thinking a lot about this in the context of Harry Potter, right? And in Harry Potter, we have kind of like the three main characters. We have Ron, Harry, and Hermione, right? Ron to me is a very emotion mind person. Stuff happens and Ron is like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna punch Draco Malfoy in the face. I'm just gonna like, wah! And like kind of wigs out a lot of the time. So he's very emotion mind. And I think that's great because I think the three of them balance each other out really well. Hermione, on the other hand, also has elements of emotion mind. You know, we definitely see that. But Hermione tends to operate a little bit more in that reason mind or rational mind. And especially with this logic puzzle at the end, it just really strongly reminds me of the part in the first Harry Potter book where there's like, she basically has a problem to solve similar to these chests of there's a poem and there's like different potions. And if they drink the wrong potion, they'll literally die. And so she's very much in that intellectual space a lot of the times in the book. So if you're looking at this problem to solve, you know, which one is in which chest, you kind of have to do a process of elimination. With the second clue, the gold is in 1 or 3, but then it says the gold is not here in 3. So then you know that it has to be in 1, but it is a process of elimination and you can't necessarily act on impulse, because if you do with your emotions, especially like if Hermione did with her and Harry trying to get the Sorcerer's Stone, they would like probably like literally die if they were just like, let's just start chugging. Wouldn't really work.
Not advised. No,
don't do that. So if we think about maybe Ron is more of an emotional mind, Hermione is more of a rational mind, it kind of gets us to that second or that third space where we kind of want to try to meet in the middle. And that's the skill that we're kind of thinking about today. And that's wise mind. Now, extending my metaphor with Ron, Harry, and Hermione, I don't necessarily know if Harry's always in wise mind, but because Harry's the main character of the Harry Potter series, we definitely see him go into all of the spaces, right? Like there's spaces where he's definitely in emotion mind, there's spaces where he's definitely in reason mind, and then there's spaces where he kind of is able to do both, right? He's able to problem solve, and he's also be able to be like, if I do this thing, this is going to happen, I'm going to feel this way, or I am feeling this way, and kind of navigating using both sets of skills. So every person has wise mind within them, but not everyone is in wise mind all the time. It's actually quite hard, I think, to be able to figure out how to do that balance of what is internally within us, what do we care about, what is in our hearts, and also that combination of values and logic and morals and trying to find that balance. Another character, because I like to think in characters again, that I think is a very wise mind person. If anyone out there has ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think Uncle Iroh is a very great example of wise mind, whereas like his nephew, Prince Zuko, probably going to be a little bit in the motion mind most of the time, where he's like, I have to capture the Avatar. But Uncle Iroh does a really great job of sort of balancing both worlds of like, let's look at this, and then also acknowledging how you feel, and also figuring out what does this mean, and being able to take next steps in a really intentional way that's not impulsive, but also is honoring feelings, because you don't want one or the other. I mean, sometimes you do want one or the other. We do kind of want to try to find a nice blend of the two. I don't know, Kaylin, what are your thoughts about that? Or is there any characters you think of when you think of these 3 states of mind?
I was trying to think of characters as you were saying that, but like my mind goes blank about like everything sometimes, you know, and I can't think of anyone because my go-to was Harry Potter for these two.
Yeah.
But I definitely want to rebrand Reasonable Mind as like Vulcan Mind, because that just makes sense to me. That I don't know. I think that's awesome. And I think the point that you made, that it's important to be in each of these states of mind at certain points in your life. Like there are always going to be moments where reasonable mind might be better than emotion mind or wise mind. Like if you're taking a math test, maybe you want to be in reason mind because it's very strong. You can't let your emotions get in the way of that. You need to focus on your test. Or sometimes being an emotion mind is really, really helpful. Like what if you have a friend who is really freaking out and you just need to sit there and help them? Your compassion will help open that up. And you don't want to be questioning their reality and be like, well, should you really be that upset about this? Well, is that really a problem? Reasonable mind could really not be your friend in that situation. So there are definitely times where you want to be in either one of those. And there are definitely times where you want to be in wise mind, because that's just going to give you more control, again, over what your choice is going to be.
Definitely.
All right, so in our next many slides, we're going to be talking about ways that you can start practicing wise mind. And wise mind really, really is part of mindfulness. So there is not one like practical thing in your life that you can like check a box off for. Really what it's about is practicing it, is giving yourself the time. A lot of people will say do this daily. I say habits take a lot of time to get to daily. So maybe just start with like 3 times a week. Add it to a couple of your later mornings. Figure out what kinds of practices work for you and figure out what ones you can just squeeze into your day. A lot of these wise mind practices, a lot of breathing exercises and things like that, you can do while driving, you can do while brushing your teeth, you can do while like in a shower, you can do a lot of these things concurrently with the things that you already do in your day. So also thinking about what spaces might work for this. But this one is my favorite one of the list that came in our curriculum. So I always picture Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin on the bridge watching leaves go under the river. But imagine yourself sitting by a river and watching the leaves float by. Each leaf is a thought or a feeling. You are merely an observer, watching and labeling the thought or feeling, acknowledging that it's there, and letting it go. All of our thoughts, all of our feelings, everything that we have, our impulses, they are things that can come and go. And a lot of the time you'll notice that our emotional suffering comes from when those things linger, or when we feel like we have to force ourselves to address those things right away. And you know what? Just because it's in there, just because it's a thought that's come in our present awareness, just because it's a feeling that's on our present awareness, does not mean that we have to act on it right in that moment. There are a lot of times where we can kind of just observe it, note it for ourselves, and watch it pass. And sometimes that's way more helpful than acting on it in the moment, because it will let you consider what your wise mind options are. Some other practices that are going to be somewhat similar to this, and Delaney and I decided to just have these full on the slides because you guys all have access to the slides after watching these webinars. They are on our website. You can download these. I'm also just going to read through these really quickly. So if having someone else read these is more helpful for your own practice, just know that you can go through and find the recording and find where we start on these. The first practice on here is a stone flake on the lake. Imagine that you are by a clear blue lake on a beautiful sunny day. Then imagine that you are a small flake of stone, flat and light. Imagine that you've been tossed out onto the lake and are now gently, slowly floating through the calm, clear blue water, the lake's smooth, sandy bottom. Notice what you see, what you feel as you float down, perhaps in slow circles, floating towards the bottom. As you reach the bottom of the lake, settle your attention there within yourself. Alternatively, we have another visual exercise, walking down spiral stairs. Imagine that within you is a spiral staircase, winding down to your very center. Starting at the top, walk very slowly down the staircase, going deeper and deeper within yourself. Notice what sensations come up. You can rest by sitting on a step. You can turn on the lights halfway down if you wish. Do not force yourself any further than you want to go. Notice the quiet. As you start reaching the center of yourself, settle your attention there, perhaps in your gut or in your abdomen. Next, we have a few breathing exercises. And again, these are great for a handful of moments, like if you're waiting for your like water to boil, or if you're waiting for like your coffee to make itself or anything like that. These are things that can really fit in anywhere in your lives. But the first of our breathing exercises is breathing in wise and mind out. So breathing in, say to yourself, wise. Breathing out, say mind. Focus your entire attention on the word wise, and then focus it again entirely on the word mind. Continue until you sense that you've settled into wise mind. Alternatively, you can ask yourself, is this wise mind? Breathing in, ask yourself, is this action, thought, plan, intention, wise mind? Breathing out, listen for the answer. Listen, but do not give yourself the answer. Do not tell yourself the answer, just listen and continue asking during each inhale. If no answer comes, try again another time. I think on these, I think a lot of people, maybe when they think about breathing skills and mindfulness, they don't understand the point of it. They don't understand how it connects to the rest of what mindfulness is for. And I think, at least for this first one, because I really like this first exercise on here, that breathe in, wise, breathe mind out. Because if you are saying those words to yourself, and you can even speak them aloud so you can engage your other sensations like hearing, it brings back to your present awareness every time you breathe in or out. This is what I'm focusing on. So again, what we were talking about earlier, where you might notice your mind kind of running away from you, or you might notice your mind is on your to-do list or what you're going to have for dinner. And you just want to gently kind of route yourself back to what your practice is. Every time you say wise or mind as you're breathing, your brain is naturally remembering the practice and you can naturally kind of just pull yourself back. So I find this one is a really easy one to start with if breathing exercises seem helpful for you. Next, we've got two more breathing exercises. So expanding awareness. This one, you don't have to say anything for anyone who might have thought that was a little too cheesy for them. But breathing in, focus your awareness on your center. Breathing out, stay aware of your center, but expand awareness to the space you're in now. For some folks who maybe are helped with some visuals, you can imagine your breath as like colored fog. Feel it coming into you, and then as you breathe it out, notice where you think it might flow into in your environment. As well, we in the therapy world talk about something called belly breathing. So I find with this one too, putting a hand on your stomach, like they mentioned in our mindfulness practice earlier, if you can feel your belly expanding when you breathe in, and when you can feel your belly constricting when you breathe out, that is belly breathing. That means that your breath is going deeply into your diaphragm, and that's actually how we want you to be breathing while we're doing mindfulness. So having that hand on your center can kind of help your awareness too with noticing that breath come in and out. Lastly, we've got dropping into the pauses between inhaling and exhaling. Breathing in, notice the pause after inhaling, or your top of breath. Breathing out, notice the pause after exhaling, or the bottom of your breath. At each pause, let yourself fall into that center space within the pause. Again, this is a great one for anyone who likes the combo of breathing with your visuals. There are a lot of visuals online with different kinds of graphics that go with breathing. So like a little like heartbeat where you can kind of go with the falls and rises. I've also seen like expanding triangles into different sided shapes where you breathe in and out as it goes. This is also great for anyone who's a fan of square breathing, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and hold it for 4 seconds, and repeat around that square. And the intention behind that is essentially the same thing as having those pauses and practicing that control over, you do have control over your breath. You get to choose when you breathe in, you get to choose when you breathe out, you get to choose when you pause.
Another resource too is if you have an Apple Watch or any, I think even Fitbits and other electronic devices have this as well, but I have an Apple Watch, so it's one that I'm familiar with, there is an app, actually, it's called like the Breathe app, and I'll get a little chime notification, and it'll actually have like a flower that like contracts and expands, and you like breathe with it, and it's on your watch, and you just look at it and you just see, okay, I'll just breathe with it. And it reminds me to do it every, I think it's like every hour, or you can set it to be whatever it is. And actually I have a very vivid memory of me sitting at YAS in the lobby waiting for my interview and having it go off, and then me being like, okay, I better breathe, and then sitting there and breathing. So there's lots and lots of resources out there. And again, it's just about finding what works for you and what's right for you.
All right. So we have reached the point where we are going to give you something that you can try for yourself at home. For those of you following along in our worksheet, this is also going to be, I believe, on the second side. It's the bottom half of the page. But we're just having y'all practice observing yourself in those 3 states of mind. So thinking about your next week, identify an example of when you might have been in emotion mind, when you might have been in reasonable mind, and when you might have been in wise mind. Because again, like we talked about, I think last week, all of these skills are things that you likely are already doing, you might just not know the name for. So part of building our awareness, again, that's the theme of the month, building your awareness for when you're doing the things and what the outcome of those things are and if they're helpful or not. So you can recreate those things when you maybe need them later. But as always, Delaney and I think are going to go through this practice and just give you guys an example of how we might do this.
Sure.
Sorry if I just sprung that on you, Delaney.
No, that's
what
fine.
I'm deciding to do.
One example, and we were just talking about this earlier, that I know I've found myself in emotion mind lately, as I was tasked to figure out like a calendar invite situation for our team. And it was very much like I was talking to Kaylin about it, and there was like miscommunications and a bunch of other stuff. And I was like totally in emotion mind. I was just like, oh my God, Kaylin, I just want to scream. I don't know what's happening. And just all of these things. And I even said that to Kaylin. I was like, Kaylin, I'm in emotion mind right now, and I just need to be here for a second because I don't have time. Like, and even though I knew I needed to be in reasonable mind or rational mind so that I could like figure out the intricacies of like making sure the meeting was scheduled every other week, but not really every other week. It's actually the second and the fourth weeks. Anyway, that's definitely an emotion mind moment for me. Do you have an example, Kaylin, of you being in reasonable mind or rational mind this week?
I think so. Well, it's kind of, well, actually, the one I'm thinking of is maybe more wise mind. Let me think of rational mind. I tend to be more of an emotionally minded person as well. So rational mind is a little bit harder. Okay, so I have an example. This week, well, for those of you who don't know, I have a cat who is about 1 year old. So he is brand new to the world and he is still learning what his limits are. And his new adventurous thing is that he has discovered he is able to jump onto the railing of my balcony. This is a little bit of emotion mind for y'all too. Like there was definitely some freakouts that happened at first. There was some running and grabbing and scooping him back inside. But my reasonable mind is that my first thought was, okay, Gators does not get to go outside anymore. No more. Let's just totally restrict the thing that makes me anxious. Delaney, do you have any ideas about why maybe that is not such a helpful solution, given that you also have a cat?
Cats can get angry when you don't let them do the things they want to do.
Hands.
They have sharp hands.
They also have loud screaming voices sometimes that they interrupt meetings. So completely restricting this thing from my cat, even though it would 100% keep my cat safe, is not going to be a workable solution. Even though it is very rational, it is very reasonable. Some cats don't go outside. That could be a thing, but it doesn't account for all of the factors in the situation. So I guess that kind of spoils my wise mind. I should probably go through what that was too. But my wise mind solution was that I went out and I bought a harness for my cat with a leash and I tether him to a table I set outside. So that way, if I am not physically out on the balcony with my cat, I know that if I step away, go to the bathroom, get some water, whatever, he will not take that opportunity to take a running leap out into the world.
And just over the railing.
Love it. And he's mad, so we're taking things slow. So I'm also using my wise mind to remember, hey, just because he's a little bit mad at me does not mean he hates me.
Yes, yes.
Did you have an example of reasonable or wise mind from this last week? It's hard to think of them on the fly.
It is. It is. I mean, reasonable mind, I think, you know, like when you're scheduling something, you go into reasonable mind, and sometimes you might need to, like, so here's an example. So I have a doctor's appointment next week, and I was very much in like reasonable mind when I scheduled it and was like, yes, this works just fine. This is perfect. All of this stuff, but it ended up potentially either conflicting with a walk that I have scheduled with a friend. And that is something that I is really important to me. Like it's very fulfilling to me in terms of like getting to see friends, especially during COVID times and being physically distant and all of that. And I don't think I was necessarily thinking about my wise mind sense in the fact that like it's a doctor's appointment, right? Doctor's appointments are kind of stressful, and trying to figure out that like balance between the two. So I think that's probably something that I would say is a reasonable mind, a rational mind thing. I scheduled the appointment, but I kind of wish I was a little bit more in wise mind, because I would have thought through some of the other stuff of like, okay, am I giving myself the space that I need? You know, this type of doctor's appointment, is it going to be something that's going to leave me feeling emotionally drained or upset potentially at the end of it? You know, hopefully not. But you kind of don't know also if like traffic, it's like right at the end of the day. So traffic is going to be a thing. Did I really set myself up for success there? So I think that's the example I have that I can think of.
And there's also the wise mind of like both of those things are really important for your health in different ways, sure, but they are both really important. So trying to figure out a way to navigate both and considering all of those circumstances is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So that is the content we have for you guys today. We are going to open it up for questions and comments, which at the moment, spoiler, we don't have any. So we'll just keep rolling right along for the sake of the recording. As always, you can reach out to us. You can go to youthiesideservices.org/virtual services to get more info about, you know, if you want services from Youth Eastside Services, I guess. You can also give us a call, follow us on social media. You can also find Kaylin and my contact information on the website as well. If you go to the school-based services portion, we're on the school-based team, so our info will be there. And always you can reach out to the other resources in our local area. The King County Crisis Line is available to you 24/7. You can call or text those numbers. Or if you are a teen and want to chat and talk to other teens, you can access Teen Link either by calling that or going online. It's a great resource. Again, that's from 6 to 10 p.m. nightly, and it's for teens and staffed by teens. But otherwise,
you cannot text the King County Crisis Line. You can text Teen Link or Crisis Text Line.
Oh,
you can only
okay,
call King County Crisis Line.
Correct.
That's the only one though.
Thank you for clarifying that. They are very similar, but not exactly the same. So yeah, all of that information is available for you. And that is our Toolbox episode 2. As always, you can watch the recordings of previous episodes online on Youth Eastside Services website. You can access and talk to us there. Hopefully you can join us live, but if not, feel free to access the material there. I feel like this is like where we're the YouTubers and like, oh, and then like, you know, hit the subscribe button.
Like, it's like subscribe to us.
There's a button down there,
Yes.
so whatever. We don't have that. So.
I don't know how to do any of that. That's
yeah,
fine.
we don't know how to. That's not our job. That's our marketing person. But she's gonna watch this and be like, what?
Oh.
Anyway, take care, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Bye.